So I'd like to just kind of introduce our topic today. This is something that I think Leiola and I feel very strongly about. It is for the average person to build a lot of wealth using real estate, where you really aren't using your own money, and you can leverage and really create a lot of wealth just being an average person. And I coach, and I'm sure Leiola does too, coach young people to invest in real estate. And my wife Kate is on the call here. She has a young client who we've been coaching for many years, who I think they're on their fourth property now. They're a young couple, had a baby, needed to expand, and are now making more money in real estate than they ever could in their jobs every day. And you're going to see how the mathematics works in all this. I also want to mention that we do have some upcoming seminars in November 15th. We're going to be doing a reverse mortgage seminar. December 13th, we're going to talk about what's happening in the refinance world. Rates are coming down. There's a lot of money to be saved in refinancing heading into 2026. And then on January 17th, we're going to be offering our 2026 real estate and mortgage market forecast. That actually comes from a gentleman by the name of Barry Habib. He's the #1 real estate and mortgage forecaster in the world. I don't think there's anybody that comes close to him. He's won, I think he's on his 4th Crystal Ball Award for being the best economist in the United States. And again, I think probably the world when it comes to forecasting real estate and the mortgage market. So he's always somebody we need to listen to because he's usually right. And so we're going to be doing that on January 17th. Today, we're going to talk about growing wealth through real estate. And I've been working with Leiola for, I'm not sure how many decades, but I don't want to age her too much. She's one of the top real estate agents in the state of Hawaii. Does an amazing job. She covers everything from extremely high luxury real estate all the way to first-time home buyers, so really covers the gamut. But she's not only a real estate agent, she's a real estate investor. She builds homes. She buys and renovates homes. I mean, she's all about real estate, and her whole life revolves around it. She doesn't just sell property, she participates in the market. And so I'd like to kind of start off with Leiola and have her give you her view of what's happening in real estate and why it's probably one of the best places that you can put your money. So I'm going to turn it over to Leiola and get started.
Thank you, Kurt, and hi everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So really quickly, how I got started in real estate, my mom gave me the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book when it first came out. I think I was 16 or 17 years old. And that was the first time that I learned of the concept, as Kurt had mentioned, other people's money. One thing that really makes real estate such a valuable industry is for building wealth are the tools that are available to the average person. As long as you have any sort of income, you can get, and Kurt will be able to tell you in more detail, a loan, even a USDA loan, which is 100% financing. And then, of course, as you start to navigate through real estate, you'll find that there are other ways to get involved as you get better and better at navigating real estate. As what I've found is that people start coming out of the woodworks. Once you have some success, people start finding you and they ask you, well, how can we get involved? And that's how I first got involved in my first partnership, where I didn't use my money. I used my expertise and then brought everybody together and structured the deal for these first-time investors to then have success in the real estate industry. And it's, you know, I love helping people. I love helping, especially I don't do a lot of first-time home buyers, but I do some. Those are very rewarding. And what I found to be the most rewarding is not just the first-time home buyers, but it's my friends and family that have some sort of change in their life and they need to move to the next property, whether that's an investment property or whether that's a move up for their family. That's when I really find joy, because they saw, okay, this commitment that we made, which was difficult for us to get into with our first home or first property. Yes, that was tough, but we did it. And now we're seeing the fruits of that pay off to get into the next property. And then from there, it just snowballs and snowballs. And as I shared actually in a business meeting a couple of weeks ago, I have a client who I've been working with for, Kurt, now 2 decades. And actually you probably, I don't know if you did her first deal, but this was at a property that I worked at during the 2007-2008 crash. She was from California and owned an HR company. And she is going to be selling her HR company for what I can gather about $50 million. But she called me the other day
I know her well. I know her.
Oh, okay, great. Because she told me, you know, Leiola, I'm going to be selling my business and I'm going to have money to invest. And I will tell you, even though I'm selling this business, nothing has been better to me in terms of building wealth than real estate. And now I get to take the proceeds from the sale of this business and just apply it to more real estate. And so I'm going to be able to help her with some commercial properties and some vacation rental properties here in Hawaii, and then she'll spread her wealth out throughout the rest of the United States.
Excellent.
But that's the fun stuff. Yeah. All right, so we'll get through our slides here. Oh, there we go. So a little bit about me. So I'm currently a broker in charge, and I hang my license with Keller Williams Realty here on the Big Island. I've been in the industry for 20 plus years now. I am also a designer, so I designed 24 projects and counting. These are projects that I've done individually myself, as well as projects that I've helped clients with in the past. I'm also a real estate developer, built 12 properties, ground up, 10 remodels and counting. I have been and am a real estate investor, both long-term and short-term rentals. And really what I love the best is being a real estate advisor, providing information and then helping my clients make the educated decision that works best for them, because everybody has a different situation and every outcome is going to be different. So whatever works for them, I help to support and provide information. A little bit more about me, some career mentions. Managing broker, I used to manage a firm that was responsible for $100 million in sales annually, and then that was a lot of work. I don't do that anymore. But I've been recognized by Hawaii Business Magazine as one of Hawaii's top 100 realtors throughout the state 6 times. I've been West Hawaii Today's Best of West Hawaii's real estate agent twice. And I've brokered nearly 2,000 transactions. So I have quite a bit of experience under my belt. I also have over $600 million in individual sales myself, not including what I managed at my managing broker's firm. And I've also provided expert opinions. That last photo was me providing an expert opinion for KITV4, a local news channel here in Hawaii. I've also been on House Hunters, Netflix, HGTV, Hawaii Business Magazine, so on and so forth. So a little bit what we're going to talk about today is how you can get involved in real estate. So quick outline. First off, talk to Kurt about getting pre-qualified. If you can't get pre-qualified, there's really not much that we can do unless you can find some sort of way to syndicate a deal, put a partnership together. But once you get pre-qualified with Kurt, come and talk to me about numbers and a strategy that works best for you. You'll see a couple of different strategies as we go through the slides. Then we make an offer. You apply the strategy once you own the property, you make the money, and then you rinse and repeat. That's kind of the basic rules to building wealth in real estate. All right, what to offer on? So if you have a residential, if you want to offer on a residential property, these are some of the different types of residential properties that you can offer on: single family homes, multifamily homes, condos, new builds, vacant land development, vacant land subdivision. Commercial property, also an option. Retail shopping centers, retail strip malls, purpose-built single tenant properties, industrial spaces, medical spaces, office buildings, hotels, bed and breakfasts. And if you take a look at all of these different categories, I have clients in every single one of these different asset classes some clients who stick solely and only to those asset classes, and others who might pick a couple to work through, and clients that are multi-millionaires from every single one of these different asset classes. So like I said earlier, the strategy depends on you and what works best for you. Pick an area, an asset class that you like, that you're drawn to, that you find the numbers work best for you for, and I can show you a millionaire in that asset class. Okay, building wealth, real estate wealth building concepts. All right, so when you own a property, there's something that you can benefit from: appreciation. That's basically just the value of the property increases over time. Simple as that. Cash flow, that's when your rental income exceeds expenses. And this is something that can apply to long-term rentals, as the majority of my first-time real estate investors get into. They tend to get into a single-family long-term rental. That seems to be easiest for them to grasp and very easy for them to qualify for as well. There's also vacation rentals. Vacation rentals also fall into this arena. You rent out your property, and of course, cash flow comes in, which exceeds the exceeds the expenses of that property. Commercial real estate also falls into this arena. Loan pay down. So tenants or you build equity. So, and I actually have a slide coming up after that shows you what I mean by this. But basically, let's say you take out $1 million loan. As time goes on, you make payments on that loan, and that loan eventually comes down. After 30 years, if you take out a 30-year loan, after 30 years, you had a tenant in that property. Well, you no longer have a loan. And now your property is worth at least that $1 million, but over 30 years' time, it will, of course, have appreciated. And then you have equity built up in that property. And then Kurt can tell you what to do with that equity after. Then you've also got tax strategies, and tax strategies I'm not going to go into too much detail into tax strategies. That's a whole separate seminar. But there are some very powerful tax strategies, such as the homeowner's exemption, which if you are a single individual, you get $250,000 tax-free on the sale of a primary residence. Or if you're married, that's $250,000 times 2, so it's $500,000 tax-free. It's very rare that you ever come across an opportunity to take $250,000 or $500,000 if you're married, tax-free, in profit, in gain, to then apply to something else. There's also 1031 exchanges. So if it isn't your primary residence, let's say you purchase a vacation rental and you decide you then want to sell that vacation rental, you can then 1031. So let's say you buy that property for $1 million. The property is now worth 1.25 million. You buy a property that's worth at least 1.25. It needs to be a little more. It needs to be $1 over at least. So you buy that property for 1.25 and $1, and you don't pay tax on that. It's actually deferred later on, and then there's other tax strategies beyond there. And then you just keep flipping into different properties, and you keep building more wealth and building your cash flow. And there's more tax strategies beyond that, but like I said, a whole separate webinar around that. All right, value add. So that's repairs, redesigning a property, development or redevelopment. So this is something, let's say that you buy a property that you want to use as a long-term rental, but it needs some repairs. So let's say you buy the property for $500,000. You put $100,000 in for repairs, But now that property, after you repair it, is now worth $800,000. You put a renter in there, you've got your cash flow, and then you come to Kurt and you say, hey, Kurt, I just renovated this property. It's now worth $800,000. What do I do next? And Kurt's going to tell you,
buy another piece of real estate and refinance the property.
yep. You do your cash out refinance, you pull your $100,000 out that you just put into it, and then you use that to buy another property. And then again, it snowballs. Leverage. So using other people's money to control a larger asset and increase returns. So like I gave you the example before, it was actually a family group that came to me and said, Leiola, we've seen how much success you've been having. We'd like to get in on this. So I went out, found a deal for them. They were the ones who put all the money in, and I just structured everything, carried out the work, and then we went ahead and sold the property and dished out the profits from there. Lots of different concepts, lots of different ways. These are just 6 of the different ways that you can make money in real estate and build wealth. Okay, and this is the slide I was talking about. The numbers are not right. The numbers are from 1950, but the idea is the same. So equity in the property continues to go up as the balance of the loan goes down, and then over time, this is the equity. This is the cash that you hold in the property. All right, so residential real estate strategies. So let's say that you decided, okay, residential real estate is what I'd like to do. That's a niche I'd like to focus on to build wealth. Within residential real estate, there are a whole bunch of different strategies that you can use to build wealth. So first is the BRRRR strategy. BRRRR stands for buy, renovate, rent, and repeat. So that's the example that I just gave you. You bought the property, you added value by renovating, then you rented it out, and then you just repeat it. Or actually, we can even add another R, replace the R in there. Refinance. You buy, you renovate, you refinance, and rent it out, and then you repeat. So you take the same equity that you used to buy that house, and then you just apply it to the new property. That's the BRRRR strategy. House hacking is what a lot of my younger first-time home buyers use. It's what I use to get into a house. House hacking is basically buying a home and renting a portion of it out. Whether you buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house and you take one of the bedrooms and you rent the other bedrooms out to some friends or some roommates, or what we have a lot of here in Hawaii are ohana units or mother-in-law units, additional dwelling units. So you buy a home that has 2 separate living areas. You might inhabit one of those areas and then you rent out the other. So that's house hacking. Fix and flips. Buy a house that needs to be renovated. Instead of refinancing and putting your renter in there and holding on to it, you just go ahead and fix it up and then sell it. And then you just use that money over and over again, wash and repeat to move on to the next one. Long-term rentals, very easy. I've got a client who buys long-term rentals, buys single-family homes that actually don't need to be renovated. They don't want the hassle of renovating. They want something that's operable, that's ready for somebody to move in on day one. So on day one, they're cash flowing. So they buy a single-family home, find a renter, they move into that rental, and they just hold on to it. And then after, 5 or 6 years, they might refinance or they might sell and do a 1031. Or they just hold on to it for 30 years. That mortgage has been completely paid down by their renter. And then 30 years later, they can choose to sell or refinance, and that's their retirement. Senior living facilities. This is something new that, it's not new, but it's newer on and more of a niche market for real estate investors. So as the demographics definitely drive real estate, and as the baby boomer population is aging, we're finding that there is a stronger and larger need for senior living facilities. And not everybody wants to go into a large facility with, 50 or 100 people, all with individual rooms. A senior living facility in a residential home is a strategy. So you buy a residential home that, let's say, is 3, 4, or 5 bedrooms, and you rent that out to a senior or a senior group. It's actually a whole business that you operate. You provide a nurse, you provide housekeeping services. So you're not going to charge just what a normal person would rent. You're actually charging a significant, let's say a bedroom in that house would go for $1,000. Well, now because you're providing all of these additional services, you're charging $5,000 or $10,000 because it comes with somebody who cooks. It comes with somebody who cleans the home. It comes with a nurse who checks in on you. So a senior living facility is another potential option. And then, of course, short-term rentals. So the photos that you're seeing on the screen is actually a home that, actually, we'll get into that detail, but it is a short-term rental. I actually have a whole little slide on this house. Okay, so here we go next. Melekai. So this home that you're seeing is called Melekai, which means ocean song. And this was originally a fix and flip, and we'll kind of go through how this worked. So this is what Melekai looked like in 2019. The owners then had owned the home for many, many years, and it just got to be too big and too much for them to maintain. They were ready to sell. So my client who purchased it got very creative. They purchased it for $1,100,000. It's a very large home. It's oceanfront on what could be, it's one lot, but it's the size of 2 lots anywhere else here on this road. It had a lot of maintenance that need to be done on it. So they purchased it for 1.1, and PMM means private money mortgage. So they actually didn't go to the bank. This person was a real estate investor himself. And so he went to a client of his who put some of the money down as a down payment. And then the seller actually financed the remainder of the purchase. And then he went and spent $1.7 million and took 3 years to renovate it. He took out a renovation loan for $2 million. And once the property was completely renovated, he then established the property as a bed and breakfast and was able to generate $400,000 a year in annual income. So now this investor has applied a couple of different strategies to this one property. He's applied a regular bank loan, renovation loan, other people's money, and then he created a business model to generate income. He could have kept the property and kept the annual income going, but he decided to sell the property. So this is the after of what the property looked like after the renovation. So he exited the property in 2024, and we sold for $4.875 million. So net proceeds to him was $2,075,000. And instead of paying taxes on that, he did a 1031 exchange into another property. And that 1031 exchange is going to generate even more income than the $400,000 that he was generating off of this income or off of this property. And here's a really pretty, he did such a great job. So if you're ever here in Hawaii driving on Ali'i Drive, take a look for this property on the ocean side of the highway. And now you know the story behind it. Okay, that's a really big spend. Maybe you don't want to spend that much. So this is an example of my clients, David and Robert, who purchased this property also here in Kona. And we'll go through the details on this. So the acquisition, they purchased the property in 2020, and they told me, and then they exited in 2024. When they contacted me, this is what they were looking for. They wanted something that was close to the beach. They wanted something with an ocean view, if possible. It wasn't a requirement, if possible. They wanted something that was trendy, because they wanted to come and stay there on occasion as well. And they wanted to vacation rent it while they weren't there so that it continued to make money. So we ended up finding them this property, which happened to be my listing at the time. And it was listed at $749,800. This was 5,400 square feet of land, 1,900 square feet of living area, and it had 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. And the way that it was laid out, and it happened to have an ocean view, but I told them, and they knew that at some point trees could grow up. There were no view plane restrictions in the neighborhood below them. So while they enjoyed ocean views now, wouldn't necessarily be the case forever, and they were fine with that. But the way that this property was set up, if you take a look just to the left of the garage doors on the first story, you'll see that there's a door there. So that door actually led way into a separate 1-bedroom, 1-bath, and then upstairs was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So this could have been a house hack situation if they decided they wanted to occupy this long term. They could have rented out the downstairs, lived upstairs, or lived downstairs, or lived downstairs and rented out the upstairs. But in this case, they wanted to operate this as a vacation rental. It actually already was being operated as a vacation rental. So they just continued on with that plan. So this is the deal. They purchased it in December of 2020. They actually did a 1031. So they had sold another property in Washington State and did a 1031 into this property. They put a down payment with the 1031 of $350,000. And they were selling another property in Washington State, but it hadn't sold yet. So instead of going to the bank and getting a loan just yet, since they knew that it was another property was going to sell shortly, they actually asked for seller financing. I was able to get seller financing for them at just 5% interest for $400,000. And they did a vacation rental, or then they operated it as a vacation rental with net operating income. So that's net proceeds to them of $35,000. Okay, so after 4 years of ownership, and I want to say that they refinanced within 6 months. I'm pretty sure the seller financing was only for 6 months. So their average vacation rental NOI, so they were able to increase the vacation rental income to $80,000. The mortgage that they paid on the property after 4 years of ownership was $120,000. Improvements and repairs, they spent $75,000. Then in 2024, we sold for 1.295. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We sold for 1.232911. We listed at 1.295. So the S&P over that term period, had they just taken the $350,000, not that they could have taken the whole 350, because if they didn't do a 1031, they would have needed to pay taxes on that. But during that time period, the S&P returned 14.25%. So that's an option for them. They could have just paid taxes, invested in the stock market, and yes, there's no labor involved. There's more labor involved with running a vacation rental. But after 4 years of ownership, the property appreciated $483,000. Their total NOI was $320,000, money that they collected after 4 years of ownership. So their total realized gain, including appreciation, plus the proceeds that they made from the vacation rental, was about $600,000. That's a total cash-on-cash return, or annual cash-on-cash return of 43%, and a total cash-on-cash return of 174%. So yes, they had to put some work in. Yes, they had to come to Hawaii to vacation for free. They were paid to do that, as opposed to just taking the money and putting it into the stock market at 14%.
Beautiful. Can you feel you like that, Leiola?
All right, so could this be you? Okay, so we saw 2 great examples of what it can look like, but what about now? Are there opportunities like that now? Yes, there actually are. So this is actually one of my listings that's available right now, and yes, this could be you. So let's take a look at let's take a look at what this could look like. Oh, before we get there, this is an important thing to know. So demographics, supply demand do run the housing market. And this is actually from the governor's website, noting that yes, there is a housing crisis here in Hawaii. And Hawaii's housing crisis has been going on since the 1940s. And how will more housing help? Well, it says here, the state needs approximately 10,000 new housing units per year to begin addressing the historical shortfall, but only 4,000 new units on average are currently being constructed each year. So we have a 6,000 housing unit deficit every single year. So what does that mean? That means we have less supply than we do demand, which means housing prices will continue to go up here in Hawaii.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's take a look a little more closely at this house. So look at this price, $879,000. Now, at any given time in our market here in Kona, Hawaii, we only have about a dozen homes that are under $1 million. This happens to be one of them. So this is a great opportunity for somebody who is real estate savvy. This is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, about 1,600 square feet. So a couple different strategies that you could apply here. Of course, if you apply just, it's already pretty well maintained. There's really not much renovation that you need to do to this home. So for my investor client who likes to purchase properties that are ready to go, just put a renter in there, this is one that would work great for that. Or this also could work well for somebody who's looking to buy their first home and is willing to house hack. So the way that this home is set up, the master bedroom, the primary bedroom, can actually be locked off from the rest of the home. So, and it has a separate entrance through a private backyard deck. So you could rent out the primary bedroom and then have the main home and the 2 separate bedrooms for yourself, or vice versa. Or here in Hawaii, if you buy this as your primary residence, you can still do a vacation rental. You don't need a short-term vacation rental permit like you do if this was not your primary residence. You still need to register it, but it's allowable. So you could lock off that primary suite and you could rent your primary suite out as a vacation rental and still occupy the rest of the home. So a couple different strategies that you could apply to a home that's less than $1 million here in Hawaii. Here's another home that I just found that just came on, or actually it's been on the market for a while, just had a price reduction to $1.15 million. This is a 4-bedroom, 4-bath home, but it's actually divided into 3 separate units. So you could, again, and there's not much renovation that needs to happen. The current owner actually did quite a bit of renovation. So for my client who likes to buy homes that are pretty much ready to go, he could go ahead and put 3 different renters in there. Or you could apply a house hacking situation. You have a little bit more privacy and occupy one of the units, rent out the 2 others. Or again, if you wanted to buy this as your primary home, you could buy it as your primary and then vacation rent 2 of the others, or long-term rent 1, vacation rent 1 of the others. Lots of different options, and it's very rare to find. I'm actually surprised that this is still on the market. It's rare to find a property with 3 separate units in it. Okay, if any of this sounds interesting and you'd like to take the next step, what do you do? Well, this is basically the same slide that we talked about earlier. Talk to Kurt about getting pre-qualified. Talk with me about numbers and the strategy that might work best for you. Make an offer, apply that strategy, start making the money, and then repeat. All right, why clients like to work with me? Relationships, market knowledge, strategy and negotiation. I live, love, and breathe real estate. So real estate is a relationship business, not just meaning I have good relationships with my clients, but I have really great relationships with vendors and other brokers and other property owners that helps me to find properties that and look at different strategies that another agent or another investor may not necessarily be able to put together. Same thing with market knowledge, strategy, negotiation. And yes, I do really live, love, and breathe real estate. Oh, the other reason I'm mostly nice most times.
Well, thank you, Leiola. So there's a lot of information there. She's the tip of the iceberg. So you've got to get to know Leiola. Let me see if I can share my screen now. Okay, can you see my screen? No, you're gonna have to unshare, I think, Leiola, or stop sharing, or okay, okay. So now we want to apply, some of the excitement that Leiola has generated in terms of getting into real estate and look at how to do this financially. That's kind of my area is so how do we do this with least amount of money? So a little bit of my background, I have an MBA in finance. I also have a master's of science in economics. I've owned and operated a mortgage company in Hawaii for over 23 years, and I've closed over $1.5 billion in loans. So it's a lot of experience there. And Leiola and I make a good partnership, certainly in helping people to manage their way through investing in real estate. So I'm going to provide you sort of a blueprint. It's almost infallible in terms of generating a lot of wealth. And for those of you out there that are still going to work for another 30 years or so, so let's say you're under 35 years old, I'm going to show you how to retire with over $17 million without breaking a sweat. And it's almost infallible. This is just mathematics and finance. And so we're going to walk through the process. And this is based on a book called Missed Fortune. Leiola talked about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Very similar thing. Missed Fortune is a great book to read. I don't know how many versions of it they've had. I read it 25 years ago, but it still is a perfect book in real estate investment. So I'm going to kind of go through a scenario of the two brothers, and this is very similar to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and based on the book Missed Fortune. And I'm just going to come out with kind of a silly, scenario. But let's say the two brothers, Neil and Bob, they inherited some money from Uncle Donald. They get $200,000. They each decide to purchase $1 million home with 20% down. Now, 20% down is important because you avoid mortgage insurance. But this whole scenario that I'm going to go through with you right now, you could do with no money down right today. I can finance you 100% up to $1 million. As long as you have good credit score. It would only delay this whole process by about 2 years. So if you don't have a down payment, you could do the same thing with 100% financing, and Leiola and I could show you how you could get the seller to pay your closing costs. You could actually go to closing with not a dollar in the deal. But for this scenario, we're going to say there's a 20% down payment. So the one conservative brother, Neil, plans to keep the house forever, pay off his loan, and on retirement, he's going to be mortgage free. That's kind of the Dave Ramsey philosophy in terms of investing in real estate. But Bob decides to parlay the windfall into a real estate fortune. And it's simple to do. It's not hard. So they both buy a home for $1 million. They put $200,000 down. They both have an $800,000 mortgage. They have a payment of a principal and interest of about $4,500. They also have taxes and insurance. So they're paying out $51.88, and that's in today's real estate world, our mortgage market. I believe these rates are going down, so it would actually be cheaper in the months to come. So 5 years later, nervous Neil and brilliant Bob now have a home worth $1.276 million. This is based on a 5% increase per year, which is the national average for the last 80 years. And I think in Hawaii, home prices will probably escalate more than 5% because we're building, just like Leiola said. They both owe $734,000. They have now gained. They now have $541,000 in equity. I mean, where can a normal person gain another $341,000 over a 5-year period? You're not going to do that in the stock market. That's $68,000 a year in escalation in home prices and pay down of principal. Now, let's say Brilliant Bob, he refinances his home in year 5. He gets a new loan, much more expensive, $1,021,000. He pays off the old mortgage. He nets $286,000. He buys a new home of similar value, puts 20% down. He's got another $30-some thousand available for closing costs and maybe to revamp the new home he buys. And now he's got a new mortgage payment of $5,481. So he's now paying about $939 more a month in mortgage payments than Neil. So what does he do? He drives a crappy car, he doesn't splurge. Then he rents out his first home for $5,500. He's got a negative cash flow of about $542 a month. But now he is paying $833 less in taxes because why? He now has a depreciation deduction on the property that he is now renting out. So really, Bob is paying $648 more a month after rent than his brother. So it's, again, you start looking into the tax implications of real estate ownership. It's the biggest tax loophole in the tax code. End of story. There's nothing better than owning real estate in terms of reducing your tax liability. So let's kick it out 10 years. So Neil has a home worth $1.6 million. Bob's homes are now both worth $1.6 million. Neil owes $650,000. Bob owes $915,000. Neil now has equity of $978,000. Bob has $500,000 more than that, $1.4 million. Neil has gained $77,000 a year, which is great. I mean, that's fantastic. But Bob is gaining almost double that. Okay, so guess what Bob does? Now, you could actually take both homes and refinance both homes and have 4 homes, but being conservative, he only refinances one home. He gets a loan amount of 80%. Again, 80% is the miracle number, so to avoid mortgage insurance. He pays off his old mortgage. He nets $387,000, and he buys an identical home. So the key here is Bob isn't consuming his own real estate. He's not buying a mansion to live in. He's staying conservative, buying a home that's not very fancy and living in that as a primary residence. So now he has 2 mortgage payments of $69.95. So now he's paying $23.49 more a month than Neil on his primary residence. Home 1 is renting for $67.50 a month. That's only a 3% escalation in rental, which is actually lower than what's actually happening. So he has a $788 a month positive cash flow. The second home he rents for the same amount, but it's got a negative $787 net cash flow, so he's almost breaking even. But he now has a tax reduction in the form of depreciation of $1,600 a month. So he's now not paying federal and state income taxes to the tune of, what is that, almost $17,000 a year. So he's doing quite well in terms of protecting himself from taxes from the federal and state governments. So he's only paying about $762 more a month than Neil. Let's go out to 15 years. He does it again. Now all the homes are worth $2 million, a little over $2 million. Neil owns $543,000, and Bob's homes are now worth $6 million he owes $3,128,000, but he has $3,108,000 in equity, virtually twice, a little bit more than twice what Neil has. Neil has gained 89,000, and these numbers are kind of conservative. You could actually, every 5 years, you could double the number of homes you own, so that after 30 years, you could actually own 64 homes. I mean, a ridiculous number. You might have some negative cash flow there, so you got to always look at that. But if you look at Bob is getting $207,000 a year over 15 years. Every year he's gaining $207,000 a year in net worth, whereas Neil is less than half of that. Okay, he does it again. We go through the numbers. He refinances one home. He gets a new mortgage, pays off the old one, gets the net cash flow, net cash of $494,000, buys a new home. He's got money for closing costs, money to fix up the homes. So he's not using his own cash. This is the most important thing. In the very beginning, they put $200,000, but Bob hasn't put another nickel into these properties, maybe other than maintenance. And he's accruing all of these homes. So now he has a new mortgage payment of $8,900. So if you look at the cash flow, he's paying $94.70 on his primary. He's paying $42.82 more than Neil because he's taken all that money out to put it to work. But if you look at the homes he owns, one is cash flowing $1,700 a month. The second one is $288. The other one is negative because it was just purchased. He's saving almost $2,500 a month in taxes. So now he's only paying about $1,354 more than Neil, but he's gaining so much in wealth. So that's a commitment to, invest in the properties that he owns. So if you fast forward 30 years, so his brother now has a home that's worth $4.3 million. And again, this is almost guaranteed. Properties have escalated 5% for the last 80 years. They're going to continue. And right now we're so short on homes nationwide. We're over 5 million homes behind in construction. 5%, I think, is conservative. Neil now has no mortgage. He's paid it off. So he converted $200,000 in a down payment into a potential retirement fund of $4.3 million. But where is he going to live? This is not a fancy home 30 years from now. He would either have to sell his house or get a reverse mortgage to tap into that equity. So if you look at Brilliant Bob, he only owns 4 homes. If you actually, every 5 years, you refinanced all your properties and bought a new one, you would end up with 64 properties. You'd have to maybe own apartment buildings or something. But he only owns 4 homes. They're worth $17 million. If you look at the balances of each home, he is netting a nice cash flow from 3 of the properties, and his own home, he's paying $94.67 a month, but the cash flow from the other properties covers that plus $4,000 a month. He's netting $4,000 a month. But what's impressive is where it would go from here. So the net cash flow from the 3 rental homes is $13,000 a month. His home costs $94.70, so he's netting $4,000 a month. All 4 homes have a combined value of $17 million. He only owes about $3 million. So now he has net equity of $14 million compared to Neil, who has $4 million. So he's more than $10 million ahead, and he only owns 4 properties. I mean, this is the craziness of real estate ownership where you're leveraging. Now, if you go forward just 1 year For the next year, Bob is going to grow his equity in those homes. If it goes up if those homes go up in value 5%, which they probably will, he's going to make $864,000 in additional equity growth in 1 year. He will reduce his principal that he owes by $287,000. So he's going to make almost $1.1 million over the next year. He's certainly not going to earn that in his job. So that's and this is a pretty conservative analysis of if you just buy one home every 5 years for the next 15 years, and then just sit back, this is what you would end up with. And again, I don't see how you can get away from these numbers over time, because real estate does go up unless real estate values absolutely collapse. And the only way that that's going to happen is if the population collapses. And, obviously that's not happening. We're so far behind, and, we're generating about 1.8 million new households a year, and we're only building about 1.4 million households a year. So we're still falling behind about 400,000 homes a year. So as you can see, the numbers are pretty simple. You could do this without ever even putting in the first $200,000. It would add about 2 years to that first refinance. And then from then on, all these numbers would play out just the same. So you can actually end up with that $17 million in 32 years without ever putting a nickel down. And that's just what leverage does for you. There probably isn't any billionaire out there that became wealthy without leverage. And leverage is kind of the key, where you can control $1 million property, and truthfully, you can control it with not even $1 down. You can control that property, and it's going to go up $50,000 a year on average without ever putting any money in. So if you own one of those, two of those, three of those, four of those, you're generating $50, $100, $150, $200,000 a year in additional net worth every year. And that's the beauty of real estate. That's the beauty of leverage. And that's the beauty of doing business in Hawaii, because homes cost more. There's no question about that. We're not building enough homes in Hawaii. I think we are the worst state in the United States in terms of building enough homes for the population. We're furthest behind than anybody. And the reason for that is Hawaii is kind of anti-growth. The counties are not issuing permits very quickly, and it is very hard for you to buy a lot, design a home, get a permit, and build a home in any reasonable amount of time. I've got clients that have been working on that for 3 to 4 years. So, again, Hawaii is not that accommodative when it comes to building new homes for the average person who lives in Hawaii. So, okay, so that's kind of the summary. Brilliant Bob didn't use any outside source of money to grow his wealth. He applied the 5-year rule, put his equity in real estate back to work. Leverage generates the wealth, and that's just the simple truth of it. Equity in your home generates a 0% rate of return. So every nickel that's in your house, in terms of equity, generates no rate of return. How many people would go to their investment advisor and say, here's $100,000. I don't expect any rate of return. Nobody would do that. But that's what you're doing with home equity. That's why you need to put it to work. So why would nervous Neil keep $4.3 million in equity, returning a 0% rate of return? And the fun part of this is Brilliant Bob stopped paying taxes 15 years ago, so he doesn't pay any tax. So when you look at the tax benefits of all of this, you get depreciation, you get other expenses that you can write off. It's a no-brainer. So, All right, so I'll open it up if anybody has any questions. We will post this webinar on our YouTube channel at eMortgage Hawaii. And if you want to put your email address into the chat box, Alex will send you the link to that YouTube channel. But all of my seminars are on the YouTube channel. Fix and flip, first-time home buyers, reverse mortgages. All of those seminars are on our YouTube channel. Okay. Did I put everybody to sleep, or is anybody out there? Okay. If there's no questions.
Sure, it looks like we do have a question.
Okay, good.
What if I have a killer interest rate and don't want to refinance?
Yeah, you can still pull the equity out of your home using a home equity line of credit. Those interest rates are coming down. So obviously, if the interest rate today is higher than the interest rate you have on your current home, we can still get that money out, at least some of it. You can't get 100% of your equity out. That's why I always do that 80-20 rule. But you can pull sometimes up to 89% of the equity out of your home using a home equity line of credit or a second mortgage. And again, there's some really good rates out there. There's some teaser rates that are in the fives. So you can get, let's say, a 5.5 or 5.75% home equity line of credit and use that money to buy a new property. Rates will come down. I'm very convinced of that. The Trump administration and the Treasury Secretary Bissett is highly focused on bringing interest rates down. The Federal Reserve just mentioned just a few days ago they're going to move to a neutral monetary policy. That's probably worth at least 0.5% in rate. So I think the 30-year fix is going to be, 5.5% in the coming months. So interest rates are coming down, and so will those home equity line of credit. Every time the Federal Reserve reduces the Fed rate by 1/4 point, home equity lines of credit go down 1/4 point. So that's a great way to protect your current mortgage and still use the equity in your home to invest in new real estate. Okay, any other questions? All right. Well, thanks for joining us on a Saturday. This is recorded. It will be posted. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you very much.